I want to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this month's Share Your Passion. And we are so excited to have our very own Larry Canner and Mitch Marder and Ben Wachspress sharing their own wisdom and experience on how to navigate this whole melee of voting possibilities, voting complications. And earlier this summer, we actually watched together as a community Ava DuVernay's incredibly powerful documentary, 13th. And Carol Benderson later gave a really wonderful presentation. We did a facilitated kind of conversation about, this incredible history of voting. And one of the, I think, key points for me watching that film was just what an incredible privilege and gift it is to be able to vote safely. The fact that none of us are having to worry about our vote being contested per se, or rejected or being harassed at the polls is really a testament to, our perch in society, I would argue. But more than anything, I think the ability to vote is one of the real hallmarks of democracy, a fair democracy, and something we should really take seriously as both an incredible privilege and an incredible responsibility. And so tonight, we're going to be learning about all the ins and outs. Larry and Mitch have both served as election judges locally for several years now, and can tell us a little bit about that and how this year is going to be different for that part also. And Ben has deferred for 1 year from college in order to work with the nonprofit organization Reclaim Our Vote, which has been mobilizing and empowering voters, especially ones who might be more marginalized, and that is an incredible and difficult task given all the obstacles this year. But really, I'm going to invite each of our panelists to kind of just share about their own experiences first open. And then really, I think the meat and potatoes of this conversation is going to be questions, because I think there's a lot of questions we have about just mechanics and also just, what do we do as voters? So with no further ado, I want to so much thank our three speakers tonight. And maybe we'll start in alphabetical order. So maybe we'll start with last name, Larry, Mitch, and then Ben. Oh, Ben just disappeared, so he'll come back though. So maybe we'll start with Larry.
Okay. So thanks, Rabbi. Yeah, I don't know. You put the expectations are pretty high. So I guess just a little bit of background, and then we'll obviously get into what we're facing this year, and Mitch, like you said, the different options. But I think just a little bit of background on why I'm doing this or why I'm involved. So I guess similar to Mitch, I was elected in 2017 after the last presidential election, but I was interested in voter rights, conversely voter suppression, intimidation, long before I got involved on the local end of things. Spent a couple of elections poll watching in battleground states. Interestingly, back in 2016, naively, I didn't think of Pennsylvania as a battleground state. And I was out in Wisconsin poll watching. And I think growing up in this area of Pennsylvania, and I think, Rabbi, you kind of mentioned it, it's what a right that we have, and we have free and fair elections. And I think we've all grown, I think, maybe a little lackadaisical with that, because I think for the first time we're even having a conversation about it, which I think is incredible. But in prior years, again, prior to the 2016 election, and I was poll watching out in Wisconsin, and typically we move around to different hotspots, but these were very minority areas, and it was shocking to me. And I mean, I can't overstate it, but it was shocking the level of intimidation or suppression that was going on back then. And it ranged from the overt to, with a poll watcher shaking his head, no or yes. And it was clearly working with a poll worker. And if it was a nod, that person was challenged much more than someone else. And it was clear it was based on race or ethnicity. So that's why, this has been, for the last any number of years, number of elections. Fast forward, I'm election judge in one of the districts in Newtown. I wanted to get involved after the 2016 election. This is the path I chose, at least for the time being. I'm truly not worried in Newtown. I think we're fortunate, and I think in our areas where we don't have the type of challenges that I've witnessed in other states, and it's happening in Pennsylvania as well. But I think we're very fortunate where we are. As an election judge, and I think Mitch will probably say the same thing, it's a nonpartisan position. We're here to make sure the election runs smoothly and that the rules are followed. But my passion is voter rights. So.
It's funny, Larry, because I started as a poll watcher also, not in Pennsylvania. I was in Cleveland, Ohio, for the 2012 election, and I didn't see what you saw with voter intimidation, fortunately. But we were well connected to lawyers just in case that became an issue for us in Cleveland, because if you know the politics of Ohio, that's the big battleground. If you don't carry Cleveland, usually a Democrat can't win Ohio. So getting out the vote there, having people actually vote, was paramount. That was true in 2008, 2012, 2016, and it will be again this year, November 3rd. I was involved here in the 2016 election, and as many people were, I was in a bubble during the voting itself. And then I get home to find out that things were not quite what we thought that they would be. Just as Larry said, I don't see voter intimidation here. The worst I've ever seen here is that people will question voters for standing around them discriminately, or discriminately if you want to look at it that way, where they would say, why isn't that voter showing an ID? I'm showing an ID, why aren't they? How do I know they're legitimate voters? And of course, the law here in Pennsylvania is that the only people who have to show an ID are those who are voting at that particular precinct for the first time. Otherwise, there's no mandate for them to show an ID. That's the law. And people can disagree with it, but that's it. So my concerns as we go into this election this year, that there'll be more people like that who will question what's going on, will think that they can intimidate the voters near them. I don't expect it to be as overt as people coming to the polls who don't belong there, but I heard something earlier today that might in fact be the case, that there are some poll watchers, unofficial poll watchers being trained, could affect our particular location. So to a large degree, we think that we are away from that. Who knows in this election what kind of tactics might be used. And as Larry said, I also consider myself, I'm in the role of judge of elections, that I am nonpartisan. I'm there to help everybody vote. My goal is always that if anybody comes, gets in line, that we get them through in a reasonable manner and nobody walks. We've seen all the film from other states where the lines are enormously long and it's extremely difficult. And I know that with my team, I do my best to keep that line moving as much as possible and get people in and out and being able to exercise their right to vote. I can't think of anything that's truly more important in our democracy than being able to be a part of making that happen. So Helene talks about this being about passion, and clearly I have a passion for this process and being involved in it. And I, to a large degree, can't wait until November 3rd. I want to see what happens. I want to be a participant in it. And all the people that are on the call now, I want to make sure that you can get there to vote. So I'm certainly open to any and all questions. I've been doing that here in my community, try to get everybody here to vote properly. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody this evening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Larry and Mitch. I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who's been really on the ground mobilizing voters. Let's see here. And then, here we go.
Um, so basically, the organization I've been working for is called Students for Justice. It's kind of came out from Reclaim Our Vote, and it's more specified to getting young people engaged in voting and also in the elections, and particularly focuses on suppressed voters in the South, where there's polling places being closed, long lines, strict voter ID laws, and then even now, all over the country, instances of voter intimidation and all sorts of voter suppression tactics. So at first, I guess I was working on just trying to get people to register to vote, but then it shifted to getting people to go out and vote and also to combat voter suppression. So and kind of on that topic, the main thing that we've been doing is working with a program called See Something, Say Something 2020. And it's basically this big database that's kind of similar to the Johns Hopkins COVID map, if you've seen that, familiar with that. And what it does is it allows anybody, if they see an instance of voter suppression, to report it, and it'll be marked on a screen for everyone to see. And then volunteers that have been trained will go on and then vet the reports to see if they're valid, and then direct it to the right people so that they can get responded to on election day, before election day, or even if the voter suppression tactic is legal, like people showing up near the polling places in open carry states with guns, you can get a social media push in order to get people out there and escort people through the people that may be threatening voters in order to get them safely into the polls. That's basically what I've been doing.
Very cool.
It's terrific, man.
Looks like Carol, do you have your hand up? I see Anna.
I do, yeah. Ben, I have a question for you. I saw an
Yeah.
article, I think it was in today's paper, about a concern regarding voters who are college age because there are fewer kids on campus because of COVID. So it's not as easy to reach them and to get them out to vote. Have you experienced anything, or have there been discussion in your group about that?
Yes. So one key aspect of what we've been doing is a big social media push, which is, it's been funded by the Center for Common Ground. So there's boosted posts and messages being sent out targeting, I guess, the people that would be on like Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. I don't know if you're familiar with some of these ones. Are social media platforms, all sorts of them, just trying to connect to as many people as possible, and it tends to be younger people. But I think now that, as I know colleges used to be the big push for voter registration, but I think social media has now tried to kind of take over for what's lacking since it's not being on campus.
Thank you. Interesting. Here's a question for either Larry or Mitch, I guess. I already voted, via, I went to the Dropbox, and I'm wondering when that gets counted, you know?
Yeah.
Don't get counted. Not going to be counted until November 3rd. Not allowed to by law. So when the polls open on November 3rd, they'll begin the process of counting the votes.
Yeah, I think to add to that, just I think it's not known as well as it should. What you just did and what many others are doing, you're technically not voting. You haven't voted. This is really early mail-in. You're dropping a mail-in ballot off in the Dropbox. And why is that significant? I think we all know that come November 3rd, well, we're experiencing it now, right? There's questioning the validity of mail-in voting. And I think probably doesn't take a genius to figure what's going to happen on election day and election night. If it is close at the end of the night, the validity of mail-in ballots are going to be questioned. Now, and I think and we probably all read, I think the nightmare situation, depending on your party, okay, is it's close at the end of the night, or potentially Trump has a small lead. And I don't think there's any secret that the mail-in ballots are predominantly Democrat. So the nightmare scenario is either it's very close or Trump has a lead on election night, and then as the days go on, the mail-in ballots are going to be counted, and it could very well swing things. And I think in that intervening time, who knows what's going to be said. So the mail-in balloting is safe. I think we all know that. There isn't really any proof at all that there's anything significant, but we know it's going to be challenged. So and it's not going to happen for a long time. We need early voting. But with the state house the way it is, it's not going to happen. But the states with early voting, it's different than what we have.
Interesting.
Also interesting to see now. We are trying to, through the media, trying to change what people's expectations are about when the election is going to be decided. So you're now starting to see the correct reports, which are explaining just what we're talking about with how the ballots are going to be counted. You can expect things are going to happen after November 3rd, after that night, and that we as voters are so used to the election being called on November 3rd. That's not going to happen this year unless things are, a wonderful landslide. Sorry, that's my nonpartisan. That's my partisan take on things. But Larry's right. The Republicans, the president has already said he's trying to put mail-in ballots as some sort of voter fraud. And again, I'm hoping that the media continues to report this accurately, which is things will take time. And clearly in Pennsylvania will very much take time. They won't start until that morning. And they've been trying very hard, the Board of Elections, to have the law change where they could start counting, and we would be closer to November 3rd to have the results. They have been unsuccessful, and it's going to be significant. There's so many mail-in ballots being done.
Are these through the state legislature, the laws that?
Yep.
Yes.
And it's going back a little bit in terms of my motivation. Before the 2016 election, I was not very interested in local political seats, down ticket races. And I think certainly 2016 taught us, but it's really, you can go back probably 16 years from the 2016 election, where the other party, the Republicans, made a concerted effort in state legislatures, excuse me. So you see that paying off in how many states? It's Pennsylvania, it's just one of them, where the decisions that are being made are very partisan at the court level, at the and the state houses. Pennsylvania, if we look today, and I think we've all mentioned to some extent voter rights and voter suppression, we're seeing that at the state level as we're talking here. If you look at the court challenges the challenges that the Republican Party has made against Attorney General in Pennsylvania, it's astounding the number of cases. Anything from the case that was just decided on Monday, it went to the Supreme Court, and that one was decided in favor of the Democrats, which was they have 3 days for mail-in ballots to arrive as long as they're postmarked. That was challenged. But honestly, that's minor. The biggest case that, I don't have my crystal ball, but the biggest challenge that's out there, and it's being appealed to the Supreme Court literally as we speak, is the whole drop boxes. And this isn't to alarm anybody. This is more to, people need to be aware of the strides that Republicans are taking to suppress the vote. And there is right now a court challenge that they do not allow the lock boxes. And it was a federal appeals court a week or two decided in favor of the Democrats, but it's being appealed. And it's almost unfathomable that we're even having the conversation that that's a risk. But it is possible, I don't want to put the odds on it, that the Supreme Court would rule to overturn that, in which case all of those mail-in ballots in the drop boxes would be destroyed. Is it likely? What I'm telling people right now, and I don't want to come across, I'm not trying to be alarmist in the very least. I think the mail-in ballot is an incredible way to vote. If you are not worried about COVID and you don't mind going in and you're distanced and you have the mask, I'm advising my friends to vote in person, because we know that vote is going to be counted right away. But it's just, I think it's more, this is again, not to alarm people, but people need to be aware of what is really happening and the challenges that are out there. And with the Supreme Court, on Monday's decision was 4-4. And that was fine because then it reverts back to the lower court ruling. If another Supreme Court justice is installed, don't know where that's going to go. So, and these are challenges to local election laws or state laws that are happening throughout the country, primarily in the battleground states, but you're seeing it in Texas, you're seeing it down south. Ben, I'm sure you're dealing with those things.
Wow, that's quite a sobering response, Larry. We have a few questions. I want to get to them. I want to just actually insert a really quick question, follow up to what you just said, which is, let's say somebody had arranged for a mail-in ballot. Is your vote invalidated if you've already signed up for the mail-in ballot and you go in person?
No. What you can do is, anybody who gets a mail-in ballot but chooses to go to the polls needs to bring everything in with them. They need to bring in the 2 envelopes, the affidavit envelope and the secrecy envelope, as well as the ballot, and present them to the poll worker at the end of the line where the poll books are. At that point, the ballot that they have will be spoiled, and they'll be issued a new ballot, and they can vote on November 3rd. If they have already voted their mail-in ballot and changed their mind and wanted to go to a polling place, that will not be permitted. They're allowed to put in a provisional, but it'll never count. So, I've told people, just as Larry's talking about, somebody is obsessed with having their vote tallied on November 3rd. Only way to be certain that their vote will be counted that day is to go to the polls.
Wow.
And I requested a mail-in ballot in August and got it, and now I'm
Right.
planning on going in person and bringing it with me. So
Understandable.
Yep, it is. I think the key with what Mitch said, and Ben, you said it, is you need to bring everything with you. If you don't, you will have to vote provisional. And you really want to do that.
In fact, what I've told people is just bring the whole package. Don't try to figure out what envelopes you need. Just bring the whole thing. We'll figure it out with you and take the envelopes that we need. But it's better to have too much than too little. If you have too little, you're going to vote provisionally. If you have too much, you're fine.
Well, that's very important. I see that Judy had a question earlier, so I'm going to bring her forward here. Let's see. Here we go. There's Judy. There we go.
Okay, thank you. So just today, I was contacted to contact my state senator because the state Senate has a proposal that's being considered to allow the counting of the ballots prior to November 3rd. This is, so you have other information, or, and I know they after tomorrow are on break, so it would either be calling today or tomorrow to let people know if we would like them to be able to vote, to have ballots start counting early, because reality is, as you mentioned earlier, and as all of the national polls have indicated, most of the people who have done the early voting or the mail-in voting, which is not yet being counted yet, are Democrats, and most of the people who are waiting to get to the polls are Republicans. So if November 3rd, the votes that are tallied immediately are the votes at the polls, clearly that's not going to be indicative of the voting across the nation.
Judy, you're right. I know the Democratic senators in the legislature have been trying to get this moved now for a couple of months. That's because of what we're talking about now,
Right.
trying to maintain the integrity of the election. They've been unsuccessful. I don't see any way that's going to happen.
It's not going to change.
Not at this late point.
Nope. No, I mean, the legislature, yeah, it's nice to call our state senators, but I mean, again, just realistically, it's not going to pass because there's a majority in the in the states, on the state Senate, Republican. So it's just not. It should. That's another example. I don't want to get on my pulpit. We'll leave that for Rabbi. Hey, look, I got to try. What is wrong with counting ballots that have already been received? There's nothing wrong with it. It's yet another. It's a form of suppression.
Yes,
especially if you know you're going to challenge. There's going to be immense challenges starting election day or election night. There is no harm because nobody's making that vote public. But it would be nice to have all of those counted before election day, or at least they actually get a result on election night. But
there's no reason other than Larry's talking about to try to make mail-in ballots look fake, like fraud. There is no other reason, but they're not. So,
and because the two other issues that really compound this situation are that because we are in the midst of a pandemic, the poll worker, there's a tremendous need for poll workers. There's a tremendous dearth of poll workers all over. So we have that many, fewer poll workers, that many fewer polls because we don't have enough poll workers.
Well, in Bucks County, there have been no polls that have been closed because of a lack of personnel. They've all maintained, they've all been open. There have been a couple that have been moved because the facility was unavailable. I don't think that our polls have been closed. They have not. At least not here.
In Georgia, there's been almost, I forget where I saw it, like someone referred to it as surgical precision in the way that they cut out voters of color, I guess, in the
like
Kemp versus Abram. Yeah, so that's still happening right now, where with the lack of poll workers, it's going to affect primarily people of color, primarily low-income people, primarily Democrats. We haven't really been focusing on Pennsylvania. It's more like Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, where that's really happening. And those people who they have limited access to mail-in voting and then need to either drive or walk miles to get to polls when they really can't take off of work or things like that. So it's just another, I guess, messed up thing.
Thank you so much. And any other, let's see, Helene has her hand. Let me pull up Helene.
Yeah, I was wondering, there's so much talk about mail-in ballots, but if you decide to go to the polls and you're worried about things being COVID safe, what's in place to keep you COVID safe while you're voting in person?
First off, everybody's required to be wearing masks. Now, there's some, even during the primary, we were under, we're not going to disenfranchise anybody if they don't have a mask. However, the Board of Health has a requirement that you need to wear a mask in a public place, such as the polls. And Bucks County Health Department had rules in place for the primary, and I know that the Board of Elections is going to vote on Thursday as to what those rules will be for the current election. But we have plexiglass, we have masks, we have hand sanitizer. I feel pretty safe in being there as a poll worker, else I wouldn't do this job. And if you're voting, we'll be maintaining social distancing. We'll be doing everything we can to keep everybody safe. We expect to get cooperation from voters in doing that. If we don't, then we've got bigger problems. Yes.
You know, we went to the polls via the drop box, as I mentioned. But if you go on votespa.com, it'll tell you the status of your ballot. And initially we got an email that told us that it was received. And then when we went on, it said the status was vote recorded. I actually have it right here. So I'm wondering what vote recorded means.
It means that they've gotten your ballot. They've been able to separate it from the affidavit envelope. They're just waiting. Those are secure. Everything here is secure, so please don't worry about that. But they can't separate the ballot from the secrecy envelope until election day. So they've received it. They've recorded that they've received it,
Okay.
but it has not been counted.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Those subject to away if they vote against it. You were saying those kind of
You have a
ballots.
question?
No, you said before that those kind of ballots could be destroyed.
Well, well, that's the core challenge, that ballots receive in the drop boxes, and I would assume if the challenge would be successful, they would move to destroy any of those that were marked as received.
But Larry, that can't happen after the election. Once the election happens,
Correct.
and they're
Yeah,
separated
but
from the secrecy envelope, they cannot be challenged because they'll already be counted, and you can't undo that.
After the election.
After November 3rd, you can't do that.
Given the,
The-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The question is the Supreme Court going to hear that case before the election?
Right, but, okay.
Yeah.
Given the volume of people who have pre-voted in this way, it's going to be ugly.
Oh, it would be. It
If that
would
happened.
be. Yep.
We have 14 days.
Move
It
to
would be a-
Canada.
Yeah.
No, but that's what you're talking about, that kind of voter suppression, the coup.
Mm-hmm. There's as we're talking about mail-in ballots, if you have your ballot and you haven't mailed it in and you plan to, I think if you friends who haven't done that yet and they plan to, they need to follow the instructions to the T. So the ballot in the secrecy envelope sealed, no marks on if you have a pen and you make a mark on the secrecy envelope, that's a problem. And then into the ballot the envelope that you're going to mail it with, and that envelope has all sorts of information you need to fill out, and it has to be signed. If any of the things are not done, the ballot will be challenged.
Right.
Let me ask you a question, Larry, because this is a question I don't know the answer to, and you seem pretty well versed with this, is, let's say that happens, the suggestion you just made that you make some kind of a mark on this secrecy envelope. Can you replace the secrecy envelope with your own envelope that's blank?
Nope.
It has to be marked as the envelope.
Absolutely.
And how would you get that?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I mean, that's, I've been volunteering the last couple of weeks in Levittown at the Dropbox there.
Right.
And I know there were voters that questioned, and we suggested they go in, so they were able to get an envelope there. So,
Okay,
but that ends, that early mail-in where you can actually pick up your ballot, that ends, I think, on Monday, on the 26th.
Correct. That's the right date.
Yeah, so you can get it at where, in Doylestown or in Levittown. Or you can't use your own envelope.
Now, if you're a voter and you realize that happened and you can't get to Levittown or Doylestown or Quakerstown to get a replacement, you still could then go into the polls, just like we were talking about earlier, with your marked ballot, with your unfortunately marked secrecy envelope, turn those in, and that you can get a ballot that you could use on election day. It doesn't matter whether they're marked. For us to take them in, replace your mail-in ballot with voting on election day. So there's always another alternative. You're not, ask us, we don't want anybody disenfranchised on these kind of questions.
Yep. Good point.
I have a very technical question about the instructions, which for the mail-in ballot, which say that you have to use a medium black or blue ballpoint pen. I presume that the pen that I use is correct, but it was a gel kind of, it was just a black pen. Is there something specific about the kind of pen that one should use?
The thing with the gel pens is they smear, and they could, and that's the problem you might have on the ballot. That's why you don't use gel pens, and that's why it's not stated that you could use a gel pen. So that's the beware on that. It would be, so if you're going to use a gel pen, I would leave my ballot out for a while, make sure that everything is dry.
Yeah, mine didn't smear, but I guess to be very, this is
Oh, I know where you, yeah.
this kind of pen. So it didn't smear. It's
Right.
just, it's a kind of weighty pen, if that makes sense.
Sure. But that's the issue that would have, is that if it should smear, that's a problem. And ballpoint pens generally don't smear.
Yeah.
So these are going to, on election day, when people fill these out, they're going into the scanner, and they could actually smear on the scanner and mess it up for everybody after you that's voting.
It's a
So
great
that
point.
scanner can be compromised. If
won't
you
be allowed
use
to
a
vote in
felt.
Pennsylvania anymore, Rabbi.
What's that?
You won't be allowed to vote in Pennsylvania.
I've been booted out of Pennsylvania. I think this is technically not a gel pen. It's more of a mic.
It's a ballpoint pen.
It's a ballpoint pen, yeah.
But we still
ballpoint pen-
protect you. That secrecy envelope protects you, because we'll never know it was your ballot that's messed
They
up.
ruined the entire Pennsylvania
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah.
Headlines.
If it's by one vote, Rabbi, wow.
I've outed myself. Okay. Well, hopefully that I believe that it does not smear though, because I'm looking at this now and just kind of running my hand over it. It's not smearing, so that gives me. I'm cautiously optimistic that I will not destroy our state's vote.
By the way, that's another good point to make, that if you do go on election day, bring your own pen, so you don't have to handle the pen that everybody else has been handling that day.
However,
It's
let me
separate.
mention this also. Let me tell you what we do on the poll worker side regarding pens. We're going to have a lot of pens, obviously. What we do is, if a person doesn't have a pen and wants to use one of ours, we give them a clean pen. And they use it for their ballot. And when they go up with their ballot, they take their pen with them, have a box by the scanner for you to drop the pen in. So after that box is reasonably full, we'll take those pens out and we will disinfect them all and rotate them back into use. So I just want you to at least understand that every pen is going to be used once, and then it will be disinfected and then be used again. So
And
keep that in mind.
Amy's doing that too, actually. Amy is a worker at.
That was my job as
Yes,
machine
that was
inspector.
one of
I
Amy's
can
Okay.
disinfector.
It's a very important job. These all are.
I brought kitchen rubber gloves.
That's smart.
Well, I felt really good turning in my mail-in ballot at the New Falls Road drop box yesterday. You started to shake my confidence a little bit in the possible suits that could come up, but as I think I'll be okay, and I followed those instructions explicitly, and definitely had a medium ballpoint pen.
I was surprised, and I never knew before, how many states you can vote in person early. In other words, the voting starts earlier. I was never really that aware of that. Do you think there's any possibility in years to come that will become the case in Pennsylvania as well?
Vote for your local offices.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
the
That's
state
the importance of
legislature
it.
has the
Right.
power to make these changes.
Right.
Look, we just had the law changed. This is our first year where you don't have to give a reason
That's
for getting
correct.
a mail-in ballot. And I
That's
never thought I would see that here in Pennsylvania.
Right.
So, there is movement, and I'm sure if we can get, well, I think we'll see movement up. I think we'll see voting made easier as time goes by. I certainly hope so, because the states that have just mail-in ballots and have nothing but mail-in ballots have a very high, relatively speaking, rate of voter participation because it's made easier. So hopefully we become a democracy that makes democracy easier.
And I also think that this might get young people to vote in higher numbers just because if they're at college or away from home, there's right now, everyone's being told about accessible voting options to vote from home. So they wouldn't really have to go out of their way to figure out how to vote when they're being bombarded with information on how to do it. So requesting an absentee ballot is the same as mail-in basically. So I think it'll be much easier for them to do that and vote instead of having to even take 10 minutes, which a lot of people wouldn't do to figure out how to do it.
I'm curious, actually, Ben, in particular, given the voting trends generationally in the last presidential election, I'm particularly interested in what you've noticed in younger generations of voters, like kind of first-time voters, that sort of thing. What are the projections for voter turnout?
The only thing that I know really statistically is that the 18 to 29-year-old age bracket was the only group to increase from in the year 2016, from the previous election, from 2012 to 2016. Still by far the lowest turnout of any other age bracket at 46%. But this year, I hope it's not just a vocal minority of people saying that voting is important. I'm hoping that young people come out to vote. I think more people are going to come out and vote in general. But I don't know. I can't, I guess, project. I don't really.
Ben, where will you be going to school next year?
I'm going to Princeton next year.
Very nice. Following your brothers. Yeah, nice.
See that Charlotte has a question, so I'm going to pull her forward. Let's see here.
Actually, it's not a question. It was just as an FYI. It was very interesting when we went over to take our ballots in to drop them off at the drop box. The drop box had actually been moved outside. And my suspicion is that the line going into the building was probably so long that it was a way of crowd control. Because I was talking to somebody from synagogue who was there earlier in the day, and they said actually there were two lines. One to drop off your vote, and I guess maybe one to register for people who had issues. And there were two lines, and I guess it just got overwhelming. And so that was kind of the opposite, I would assume, of voter suppression. That was, encouraging people to vote, which was a great
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are incredible. Was that in Doylestown?
No, actually, it was in Levittown.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was Monday, yesterday afternoon. Yeah.
Okay.
Was there still an officer or looking the drop box?
Mm-hmm. I said, thank you.
There was on
Exactly.
Friday. Yep.
Yeah, I was there on Friday.
I voted on Monday morning, yeah.
And there was an officer there.
There was a person
Me personally.
opening and closing.
Yeah.
For me personally, I want to see that security there.
Yes.
I had
yes.
no problem with that.
Mhm.
So I'm glad it's there.
I was too. We vote for it.
And I heard in Doylestown, they now have 2 boxes.
Oh, good.
Are we sure one of them's not fake?
This is not California. We're not California.
There was an issue with that. People putting up fake drop boxes and trying to get people to put ballots in them. But they got caught.
Where was
What,
that?
here locally?
I can find it.
Now I'm just worried about people sabotaging the election by purposefully using smearing ink.
Rabbi, don't let that get out.
We're keeping this in the Zoom room, okay?
Yeah, that was in California, the fake
Yeah.
boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Orange County.
To me, the thing that, and Ben, I credit you for what you're doing. When I heard that, is it Harris County where Houston is, that they, in Texas, they are only allowed one drop box per county, and it's such a huge, what are there, 4 million
Right.
people in one drop box? It just blew my mind.
Terrible.
Survived, and believe it or not, that survived a court challenge. It's beyond belief.
Harris County being Houston.
Correct. A surprise, it's Democrats. Well,
I was just wondering, for the folks who went to the drop boxes, which is what I want to do,
yeah.
and I sounds like Levittown is an option too, and I thought it was just Doylestown. But is there? Have you found there's a line? Do you have to wait? What is that exactly like?
Different people have different experiences. I think that the line for the drop boxes actually moves pretty fast. Sometimes there aren't even people online. Sometimes, for instance, I was online, I waited 10 minutes. That was about it.
Okay.
It's not like coming into a polling place where you're waiting in line for an hour. That is not the case.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just go there with, it's all a matter of expectations. Expect that there'll be a line. Don't expect it to last very long.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't
Now,
sure.
remember, you can only do your own ballot.
Right.
Everyone has to do their own ballot into the drop box. So like I took my wife with me, she could do hers, and that would, you just need to be aware of that.
Planning to do what you did. My husband and I will each go with our ballots and,
Right.
you know, and
Correct.
drop them off.
I have heard that in places with early voting, there have been, 8-hour lines and the really horror stories. I was relieved to see, I went pretty early. I think they open at 8 in Levittown. If you go on the earlier side, at least for me, it was about a 5-minute line. Not more than 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
And it sounds like
Well,
Levittown
it was
has been
very
better than
friendly, no big long wait.
Good.
Right. I had the same experience. It was 5 minutes. And the line looked long and it was 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good to know.
Afterward, it was really fast.
It's a lot of friendly people on the lines. It's
Yes.
the people that are talking. They're happy to be voting.
Yep.
So it's not depressing at all. It's seeing people exercising their right to vote, and it's kind of a democracy party.
Encouraging.
You
Try
might
that
even see
this year.
You might even see folks from Bethel. My better half was there volunteering today, assisting voters, and he saw, was it like a 4 different Bethel folks? 3 different Bethel people. So if you go to Levittown, you have a higher chance.
That's where Bethel began.
The origin. Any other questions? I see some hands maybe. Let's see, I'm gonna scroll through. Anyone have any final words of advice for voters, either who've already voted or who are waiting out for day of?
My advice is plan. Decide how you want to do your voting, because if you wait too long, some types of voting will be more difficult. So decide how you want to do it, whether you want to do it mail-in, absentee, or come to the polls, and then just do your plan. Like we have from forums like this one, it's not as straightforward as it was in previous elections. So the more you know, the better prepared you are, the easier it will be.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Mitch. I think the only thing I would add to that is if you decide and you want to mail in your ballot, do it soon.
That's my point, exactly.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you have to do it right away.
You're going to do it now.
Correct.
You really don't want to get too close to the election. I think this is around where you want it, because who knows
Right.
with how long it'll take in the mail.
Exactly. And if you do start to get closer to the election and you still want to do mail-in ballot, you then have to really go to the drop box to make sure that your vote will be counted. I would not wait. If it's more than a week, it's less than a week before the election, I would not use the Postal Service. I would go to the drop box.
Very good. Well, I want to thank everyone so much, especially our presenters, Larry, Mitch, and Ben, for a really illuminating and encouraging conversation. I want to thank you also for the work that each of you do, because each of you really is doing very important work at a critical time in our country's history. And strength and success in everything you're doing to enable voting. And again, I want to thank everyone for coming in this very meaningful conversation about voting, and I hope everyone has a positive experience casting their ballot. So I want to wish everyone a Laila Tov, good night, and hope to see you. Well, I probably won't see you at the polls since I already voted, but you guys will see, maybe you guys will see each other in Levittown. So there you go.
Colleen, thank you very much for
Thanks for
setting up
having
this
me.
forum.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I
Thank you.
You know, and I always thank Colleen for putting together this wonderful
Yes.
series. And if you have a passion you'd like to share, we are always eager to hear all about it. We do this at least a couple times a month or once a month, and always looking for folks to. We've had an amazing line of presentations, this one very much included. So looking to keep up that momentum. All right, take care, everybody.
Thank
very
you.
much. This
Laila
was
Tov.
interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Laila Tov.
Thank you. Laila Tov.